Chess players face the problem of whether or not to make an exchange several times during a chess game. If the exchange is not of equal material value, it's usually easy to tell who's getting the better of the deal. But if equal material is to be swapped, then the primary consideration should not be material, but time. In general, an exchange loses time for the player if his opponent can recapture with a move that develops or improves the position of a piece. In this case, from Purdy Gunderson, Melbourne 1927, a bad exchange brought an enemy piece into an attacking position. When white played rook f8, threatening the black rook, black erred by capturing on f8 because the swap brought the white knight closer to its attacking position. Instead, the paradoxical backward move, rook c8, was the way to go. Now, the white knight can't hop to f4 to make the threat because the rook is hanging, and the knight can't move to f8 because the rook's in the way. So if the knight is to move closer to the black pawn, white has to make the swap that brings the black king closer to the game. And that developing move, that one unit of time, would have made the difference in black losing or drawing this chess game. Morphy's game from the Paris Opera House in 1858 is perhaps the most famous and widely shared chess game ever played. It provides an excellent example of an exchange that loses time. Philidor's defense is a solid but cramped method of defending the e5 pawn, which white attacks again by filling the center up with pawns. And then bishop g4 is one of the most famous chess mistakes on record. Because after white captures on e5, black sees that if they recapture, then white can swap the queens, which breaks the pin, after which white can steal a pawn. Rather than lose time with this exchange on f3, black has tried to gain some time by sacrificing a pawn. Black's compensation for the sacrificed pawn is insufficient. 3 developing moves is probably good enough for a pawn. In this position, black only has 2, and white's extra pawn is an awfully good one. But rather than sacrifice a pawn or simply lose one, the Duke of Brunswick and the Count Isouard chose to capture on f3, which loses time because white develops a piece with the recapture. The bishop moved twice to trade itself for a knight that's only moved once. And then after the recapture, white finds himself 2 moves ahead in development with a threat everyone recognizes to checkmate on f7. Black ought to play queen f6 now to break the white queen's line to f7. Because when black uses the knight to block the file, the queen shifted her focus on f7 to the diagonal. And this is why black needed to play queen f6 on the earlier move, because then the queen would be guarding f7. But now queen b3 makes a double threat to f7 and b7. The Duke and the Count played a rather sneaky queen e7. And now if white steals the pawn on b7, queen b4 forks white, king, and queen. And after the forced swap of queens on b4, black will emerge only a pawn down, and the position isn't hopeless. So knight c3 develops with a threat. Knight c3 means that black's queen b4 won't be a check. So queen b7, capturing the pawn and snaring a rook in the corner, is threatened again. c6 guards the b7 pawn laterally, while preventing a possible knight d5. White kept developing, and now black finds themselves in a bind. The f8 bishop is blocked, so the rook is hemmed in. The black knight doesn't want to develop to the corner, and if it develops to d7, that breaks the queen's line to b7, and the queen rook is blocked too. So, maybe in frustration, the Duke and the Count lashed out with a much too early b5. White was far enough ahead in development to risk sacrificing a piece, which opens the diagonals leading to the black king. When black interposes, it's a self-pin, and when our opponent has a pinned piece, that's when we pile up on it. If black castles now, he'll be checkmated soon after bishop a6. So rook d8 brings a new piece to the aid of the pinned knight on d7. And white's got one more piece to play with. White would like to bring the last rook into play to bear down on that pinned piece. But if white simply lifts this rook, if white plays rook d2 or rook d3, it's too slow. It's not as active as the capture on d7. And after black recaptures, the rook is now pinned on d7. And the h1 rook joins the game. Black's situation is worse than ever. The knight's pinned, the rook is pinned, the bishop is trapped, the rook is right behind it. The only black piece with any mobility is the queen. But Morphy finished this game with his most famous combination. Bishop d7 clears the b-file. For a pretty queen sacrifice and a checkmate. This is the most famous game of chess ever played. Everybody ought to know it. Everybody ought to share it.